Zayin Pasuk Chof. Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof. It reiterates the word tzedek. Tzedek, righteousness you should pursue. Or justice, Lamantichi of Yerashas Oretz. So you should live and inherit the land, Asher Hashem Elokechem Nosein Loch, which Hashem is giving you. So Rashi cites the Sifri, but it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin also. Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof. Holachacha Bezdin Yofeh. That if a person has a choice to go to one of two courts, you should go to the better of the two. Even though it may be a simple verdict that you need, if you have a choice to go to a better court, a more advanced level of judges, go to the better of the two. Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof. You should live and you should inherit the land. Inherit doesn't mean be able to remain in the land. It's worthwhile to appoint appropriate, qualified judges, to bring life to the Jewish people, that they should be able to dwell in the land. So it's clear, the inference is, but if they're not righteous, they're not appropriate, that will be a basis to be exiled from the land. If they're ultimately you choose the most qualified, righteous, equitable judges, that will guarantee that Klal Yisrael should live and remain in the land. And therefore it's worthwhile. If not, they're going to be exiled. The Gemara tells us in Shabbos that because the judges were corrupted, therefore, that was one of the reasons why we were exiled. So, of course, the Beis Mikdash was destroyed. But ultimately, the reason why we were exiled is because the judges were corrupt judges. So, there's a Gemara. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin that a judge who's done emes lamito shel Torah, that he renders a verdict which is emes, it's truthful, lamito shel Torah. It meets the standard of the truthfulness of Torah. Nase shutiv ma'akadosh baruch hu ma'aseh bereishis. He becomes God's partner in creation. But if he doesn't render that kind of judgment, the Gemara quotes a pasuk, "V'kova es koveim nofesh." Hashem says, "I will take his soul." The judge, Hashem says, "I will take that judge." So, two extremes. If he renders a truthful judgment, which is din emes lamito, unadulterated truth, because God says you're my partner in creation. And if not, you deserve to die. So the obvious question is, why when you render that special judgment, why do you become God's partner in creation? If a person steals, regardless of the amount of money, he's not deserving of the death penalty or to die. But yet the judge who's corrupt, and he does not render that proper judgment, he deserves that Hashem should take his neshama. Hashem says, I will take his soul. Why? We find at the beginning of creation, the Torah begins, Bereshis bara Elokim et hashamayim v'soretz. God created in the beginning heaven and earth. So what is the appellation which the Torah refers to Hashem? Elokim. What is Elokim? Elokim is midas adin. That's the attribute of justice. Later, and every day of creation is Bereshis bara Elokim, Vayomer Elokim. Elokim said ye are, there should be light. Vayomer Elokim. Every time it's mentioned Elokim. And then afterwards, when the Torah concludes, after it says, these are all the aspects of creation, and says Hashem Elokim. Hashem, Yudke Vovke, is the midas harachmim, is the attribute of mercy. Why all of a sudden is there a change? So Rashi cites the Medrash, that Medrash says initially Hashem wanted to create the world with midas hadin, with exactness, but because he saw the world couldn't survive midas hadin, he coalesced into the judgment midas harachmim. But what is the ultimate? What was the original intention of creation? If you have midas hadin, everything is perfect. Everything functions perfectly. But since mankind is prone to fail, the world would not survive. Humanity would not survive. Therefore, he coalesced into the judgment, Midas Arachmim. Now, so we see that for existence to exist, you have to have things done exactly properly. Mankind has to behave. And there's what? There is justice. You have to have justice. Without justice, the world cannot be. Except divine justice is too much for humanity to tolerate. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He said, although there's no divine justice, but there has to be, minimally, there has to be human justice. There has to be mortal justice. That's called din shel mato. There has to be justice on the terrestrial level. And therefore we find that one of the 7 Noahide laws is mishpatim. Even a non-Jew has an obligation to set up a judicial system. That people are culpable if they don't keep the 7 Noahide laws. That's the mitzvah of mishpatim, even for a non-Jew. For Klal Yisrael, the laws of justice is a whole different dimension of very specifics of to what degree we're held accountable for, because we have endlessly more mitzvahs, positive and negative commandments. But you have to have justice, whether you're a Gentile or a Jew, there has to be justice. Why? Because without justice, the world cannot function. So the Medrash says, "Im yesh din lamato," if there's justice on the terrestrial level, ein din lamalo, then there's no divine justice. However, im ein din lamato, yesh din lamalo. But if there's no human justice, there's no justice on the terrestrial level, then there is justice from above, then there's divine justice. So it comes out interesting. So the judge, who's the equitable judge, who actually is qualified, and he's a person of integrity and honesty, when he renders that judgment, that's din emes. It's a truthful judgment, justice, judgment, verdict. So he's maintaining din shel mato. By him being that equitable judge, the proper judge, the qualified judge, he's guaranteeing that there should not be divine justice. Because if there's divine justice, the world is destroyed. Because the world cannot tolerate divine justice. Or there's endless suffering. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the judge who's done emes lamito, God says he's my partner in creation. Although he didn't create the world, but he's guaranteeing that God should continuously will creation should exist as it should exist, with bracha. But if he's corrupted and he's not the proper judge, either he's not qualified or doesn't have the honesty, Hashem says that there's no justice. There's no terrestrial justice, therefore there has to be divine justice. So what is he the cause of? He's the cause of all the suffering in the world. Therefore, God says, it's not you're stealing. You're causing something illegal to take place. You're causing the world should actually suffer endless levels of suffering. Therefore, Hashem says, I will take your soul. A person steals, that's unrelated to justice. The Dayan, who's not the equitable judge, he's actually causing Hashem should actually activate divine justice. Okay? Now, very interesting. The Gemara quotes a pasuk in Tehillim, Elakim nitzav badas kel. When the court convenes, God convenes with the court. Meaning the judges, when they render the judgment, they're seeing through God's eyes. Meaning if they meet all the criteria of what a judge is and what the judgment is, that conforms with the laws of the Torah, Hashem says, I will convene with that court. So it comes out that even the terrestrial justice, the human justice, is really divine justice. It's not divine in terms of the exactness of din shamayim, of din lamalo, what we call midas adin, but it has relevance to divine, because if Hashem says, if the court meets all the criteria which the Torah prescribes, I will convene with that court. So the ultimate, that verdict is God's verdict. And that's the reason why the whole concept of human error has no relevance to the court that actually conforms with all the criteria and which are prescribed by the Torah for that reason. So it comes out the din lamato is din lamalo within the context of human justice.